So I'd like to take you back now to 1967 with the publication of Hugh Nibley's very important work, Sense Cumorah. In that publication, Hugh Nibley made a very significant observation concerning the beginning of the Book of Mormon. Now, in its present form, the Book of Mormon begins with the writings of Nephi, and he begins his account by describing a visionary experience that his father enjoyed as a prophet of God. So Nibley's observation in 1967 was very brief, albeit very significant, when he states that Lehi's vision takes readers, quote, back to a council in heaven as a fitting prologue to a religious history, end of quote. So with this very significant observation, Hugh Nibley makes a point that actually has received since that time period further analysis and ultimately further credence as an important scholarly observation for the commencement of the Book of Mormon. Lehi's vision in the commencement of that account clearly falls under a specific literary genre of Hebrew narrative known as a call narrative. Now, in the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, examples of call narratives where a prophet receives a divine commission to serve as a messenger and mediator for the heavenly council begin, at least chronologically, with the story of Moses in Exodus chapter 3 on Mount Sinai. From there, then, they appear in Isaiah chapter 6, in Jeremiah chapter 1, and on through Second Temple period literature, or the intertestamental time period as it's sometimes referred to, in the apocryphal and pseudepigraphical accounts of ancient Judaism. So with its description then of Lehi's call narrative, of his prophetic commission as a messenger and mediator of the Lord, the Book of Mormon presents a very similar view concerning prophets and this heavenly council, just as Nibley observed in 1967. The stories of prophets, visions, and councils in the Bible and the Book of Mormon really do provide a significant link between modern revelation and the ancient world. So, the Book of Mormon begins with Nephi describing the visionary experiences of his father Lehi, quote, in the commencement of the first year of the reign of Zedekiah. Now that's verse 4. So in the opening of his account, Lehi then goes on to inform his readers that Lehi, his father, felt overcome by the Spirit because of the things which he saw and heard, referring to verse 6. Now this reference to seeing and hearing in the prophetic commission is really quite significant. Clearly, Nephi understood these verbs, to see and to hear, as meaningful, because he repeats twice in verse 6 these elements in relationship to Lehi's prophetic commission. And then again towards the end of the first chapter, Lehi provides the verbs with additional emphasis through this narrative art of repetition, which of course is very Old Testament-like. Verse 18, for example, from 1 Nephi chapter 1, he, Lehi, went forth among the people and began to prophesy and to declare unto them concerning the things which he had both seen and heard. Again, that's verse 18. Then in verse 19, Lehi testified that the things which he saw and heard, and so forth. So Nephi's multiple references to the actions of seeing and hearing in a prophetic context proves very meaningful. If we go to the Old Testament and turn our attention, our focus, back to Jeremiah, who from the Book of Mormon's perspective is a historic contemporary to Lehi, then we encounter Jeremiah's definition of a true prophet in Jeremiah 23:18 as an individual who, quote, has stood in the council, and of course the spelling for that should be C-I-L, meaning an assembly. For a true prophet has stood in the assembly, the council of the Lord, and has seen and heard his words. Now, this is, of course, somewhat obscured in the present version of the King James Bible. For Jeremiah's qualifications there appear as simply just to perceive and to hear, but the actual Hebrew verb is ra'ah, which means not to understand or to perceive as much as it is to see and to hear. The exact two qualifications that are presented in Jeremiah then become meaningful for the account that Nephi presents regarding his father and his prophetic commission. Now, from an ancient Israelite perspective, Nephi's account of this prophetic commission that Lehi experiences suggests that Nephi viewed Lehi as a leading prophetic figure. Now, the first two chapters of 1 Nephi contain multiple references to this important biblical expression, my father, on the part of Nephi. So, if we look, for example, at verse 2, we read that I make a record in the language of my father. Verse 4, my father Lehi, having dwelt in Jerusalem. Again in 5, my father Lehi, as he went forth. Verse 11, he stood before my father. My father, verse 13, verse 14, verse 15, 16, 17, we have it twice, the record of my father. Verse 18, many marvelous things unto my father, my father, my father. So over and over again, Nephi makes reference to the fact that Lehi is, quote, my father. And this possessive description of Lehi is, of course, biologically correct, but the emphasis, and although it appears redundant, is actually quite meaningful when we read 1 Nephi chapter 1 through the lenses of the ancient Near East. In biblical Hebrew, or at least in the Hebrew Bible, I should say, the expression my father is one word. It is the word Abi. Now the title Abi, or my father, carries at least two meaningful nuances in biblical Hebrew. First, the term my father is an expression used for intimate address. It's like the language of a toddler. It's been explained as the language of a toddler, of intimacy, the equivalent of perhaps papa or daddy. Nephi, however, may have intentionally repeated the expression for an additional reason. So, as biblical scholar James Williams notes in his 1967 article from the Journal of Biblical Literature, there are, quote, certain well-known passages in which the prophetic leader is called Abi, or my father, end of quote, from the Old Testament. So one classic illustration of this nuance associated with the term Abi, it would include 2 Kings 2:12, where Elisha sees the ascension of Elijah and cries out, my father, Abi, Abi. The Book of Mormon, therefore, begins with an account of prophetic commission in which Lehi, the leading prophetic figure in the opening passages or pages of the Nephite record, receives a call to serve as a messenger concerning the things which he had both seen and heard, and as this leading prophetic figure, whom, of course, Nephi emphasizes as my father, he is presented as a typical ancient Israelite prophet who has seen and heard things that pertain specifically to the heavenly realm of the divine council. So again, Nibley's observation in Sense Gomorrah, although very brief and left somewhat unexplored at that time, was really, really quite meaningful. And in fact, we're going to take the next couple presentations and explore that in some detail. Should be a lot of fun.